let's get to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The drama out of Pittsburgh has been high this week. We had George Pickens, who was a little frustrated with his team. He did some social media drama. We saw him maybe perform a not nice gesture on the field towards his teammate. Do you want to elaborate on that? Tell us your thoughts, Chus.
Yeah, so basically after the win on Thursday Night Football against the Titans, George Pickens had finished with 2 receptions for -1 yards, and he did have a catch in the end zone that would have been for a touchdown if he would have stayed in bounds. So his half of his foot was out of bounds, out of the end zone, so it did not count. Obviously, on my angle, because I was at the game, it did look like a touchdown, but obviously on the replay, it clearly was not a touchdown. But I mean, that was just in that moment in time. Like, you couldn't blame Kenny, you couldn't blame Matt. It was completely George Pickens' fault for not at least getting that second foot just toe tapped, because he's a toe tap genius. Like, he toe taps like all the time. So the fact that he didn't get this one was very shocking. Nonetheless, it was still a win, and we'll take it. But after the game, George Pickens posted on his Instagram, I don't know if it was like a day later, he posted something goofy. I don't really remember what the post was, but I remember in the bottom left corner in really small letters, it said "Free me." And apparently, like, after a couple of other touchdowns during the game, like, I didn't see this because I was at the game, so I wasn't watching from home. I wasn't seeing any of these videos or anything like that, or any clips of the sidelines or anything. I was just seeing what I was seeing. Apparently, he didn't greet any of the players after they scored a touchdown. Like, he was just having a real hissy fit, more or less. I mean, he was just not being a good sport. So nonetheless, after he posted "Free me," he eventually did delete it, but he also ended up deleting all of his Steeler-related posts, changing his profile picture, and being all cryptic and mysterious. And I don't really know why, because it's not like he can get traded now. I mean, if he was having if he was having so much concern or this much issues, like, he probably should have just not, like, he should have just requested a trade like earlier in the season at this point, like, instead of having a meltdown week, right after the deadline. So I mean, like, that's on him, because I mean, he's had games where he hasn't had that great of numbers. This just happened to be probably one of his worst games, except for maybe a couple last season where he had nothing at all. And like, I've talked to a couple other Steelers fans about this, and it's kind of interesting, because you would think that a lot of people would be on the side of, because, like, I'm on the side of, I think George Pickens is overreacting a little bit. And I think that the problem is, yes, I understand, like, Matt Canada isn't the best, but I mean, Kenny is trying to get everybody the ball. He was also dealing with some injured ribs. Definitely looked promising, a lot more promising of an offense last week on Thursday Night Football. So, I mean, there's always that maybe with Matt Canada being on the sideline, that the Steelers will look, a little bit better going into these couple of weeks, or maybe they'll still look the same. But, there's some hope there. Kenny Pickett was doing a lot of checkdowns. He was just passing a lot to his running backs, and there was a lot of things like that. But he also was coming off of rib injuries 4 days before, and I genuinely think he probably shouldn't have played. But then again, I don't think the Steelers wanted to put in Mitchell Trubisky in the risks of losing and then falling even further down into the division when we have a lot going good for us right now. So, but when it comes to George Pickens, I was kind of upset with it, and I definitely thought he was overreacting, but he's done this a lot. I feel like he just is, like, kind of being a crybaby a little bit, and I was asking some other Steeler fans about it, and there was one that was kind of interesting. One of the Steelers fans I actually asked, he actually said that he agrees with how George Pickens is reacting. And the reason he actually agrees is because he believes that George Pickens is the best wide receiver on the team, which arguably, yeah, he probably is. I mean, he definitely could be. But I mean, but in my opinion, I feel like that argument isn't valid, because even though he is the best wide receiver on the team, if that so desires to be the case, why are you so upset that, like, oh, you didn't get the ball this game. Like, I mean, there's been games where like some of the top wide receivers in the NFL don't get the ball. Like, I mean, you have like, Stephon Diggs who might get, under 50 yards a game, or some wide receivers that just get like shut out completely. Like, there's games where that happens. And like, understandably so, like, this offense is not that productive. So like, George Pickens wasn't getting like great numbers anyway. Like, I mean, it wasn't like he was getting thousands of yards. Like this season already, he's had, like some games he'll have 3 receptions, 80 yards, and a touchdown. It's like, okay. Like, I mean, I get he's a good wide receiver, but the problem is it's still a work in progress offense, So, but
He's not a Devonte Adams or an AJ Brown where he can come out and say, "Look, I am the team. I should be able to have a 100-yard game very regularly."
yeah,
And you mentioned this was one of his worst games. This has to be his worst game, because if you're sitting at home and you didn't play in an NFL game last week, you had more receiving yards than George Pickens, because George Pickens had 2 receptions for -1 yard
yeah,
against the Titans.
and like, and I get that, but one of the things is like, all receivers, like, I mean, granted, like, some receivers never have that bad, but like, it's one of those things where it's like, you kind of have to go with the grind, more or less. Like, you have to just kind of, like, there's going to be obstacles in the way, like, as a wide receiver, or anybody in the NFL, anybody that is in the NFL, whether you're a wide receiver or running back, there's going to be adversities, and you have to just get over them. This isn't probably an ideal situation for Pickens right now, because he believes he is a dog. And I do believe that he is and will be a dog. You just can't be a dog right now under this offense. And the problem is it's adversity right now. And because he's facing adversity, he doesn't know how to handle it. And like, he was on Georgia for a while, remember? So, and Georgia was very, very, very good, and they still are very, very good. So like, he's used to winning constantly. And I think this is very hard for him, because I don't think he's necessarily used to being on a team where he's not getting as many targets. He's not winning as many games. I mean, granted, they went 9-8 last year, and this year they're 5-3. It's not like they're undefeated 7-0, and he's getting like 110 yards a game. So I don't know. I feel like he's just struggling a lot with adversity. And he did bring back a lot of his Steeler posts on Instagram, like, or at least a couple of them. So he kind of stopped throwing his little fit. He kind of is acknowledging that he is a Pittsburgh Steeler. But I just found it very odd that this whole thing was happening. But it does show a lot about his character, and it does make me wonder about what kind of locker room culture there is, because I feel like there's been a lot of problems with wide receivers in the past. And obviously with Antonio Brown, that could be here nor there, saying with like the head injury from Vontaze Burfict. It could be a lot of different things, or it could have been, the culture changing him on top of that. I mean, and then you go as far back as like, Martavis Bryant, like, literally could not get off the drugs. Like, regardless, like, it just was very, it's like, obviously there wasn't enough influence to get him to change how he was, what his everyday life was, and he just kind of just kept going. And now obviously, like, he is coming off of this multiple year suspension from the league and stuff, and he's hopefully going to do a lot better in Dallas. And I hope that he's been clean for a while, and I hope he's doing well, and I hope nothing but the best for him. But it shows. And like, and even then, like, me and Josh talked about the Hines Ward thing. Like, Hines Ward had a weird hit in 2009 that made a whole rule about it, and that was during like the Mike Tomlin era. And like, there's a lot of things that we're going to do a deep dive into this probably like postseason, depending on how well George Pickens reacts for the rest of the season. But I do kind of want to do a deeper dive into these receivers and just players in general, because I feel like there's been just a lot of weird culture issues. And like, you would think that a lot of people were like, oh, it's Ben Roethlisberger. Ben's not even here anymore. Like, a lot of people were like, yeah, the reason Bell and Brown and all these people are doing so many of these like weird, heinous things and saying these things and doing these things, it's because of Ben. Ben is the power mongler. And it's like, bro, Kenny Pickett's here now. Like, it's not even Ben. Like, buddy's in
Kenny's fault.
Oh, okay.
Just shift the blame.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there's been a lot of issues. And like, even Claypool, like, what the heck happened with Claypool, man? Like, he just really fell off. Like, I don't know. So there's a lot to be said, but Pickens is worrying me because if he ends up like an Antonio Brown, I want him off the team next year. Because I would rather, I mean, we can develop wide receivers. We just can't keep them happy, I guess.
So what you said, if he ends up like an Antonio Brown, what does that look like to you? Are you talking like full on, like bringing gummy worms to practice and stuff? I'm just going to call it a gummy worm. I'm not going to say what it actually was.
Well, I feel like, I think what I mean by that is like, I mean, he's already kind of having like moments of it already, but like if he starts doing the stuff, like I remember when Antonio Brown first got traded and stuff like that, I remember, or like right after or whatever, I think Juju Smith-Schuster got like Steelers player of the year or something like that, or wide receiver of the year. He beat out Antonio Brown the one season that Juju was a rookie or something like that, and he called him like boo-hoo Schuster on Twitter and like was making this big deal about it and causing all these issues, and he was just constantly in the news. I feel like we'll know when he is really stepped up to that point, because I feel like he'll end up in the news a lot, like just not even just local news. Like obviously this Pickens thing it's a national thing, but I feel like more people in Pittsburgh are talking about it. But when Antonio Brown was like wanting to get traded, when he was bashing Juju, when he was having these issues, it was national news pretty much. It was on all the NFL platforms. He went to Vegas and then he was complaining about foot sores or whatever he was having issues with. I don't even remember what his issues were. They cut him and it was a whole mess or whatever it was. So like it's interesting. So I mean, but we'll see. I think we'll know. I think we'll know if he ends up like him.
What is the line? I guess I was asking, what is the line for you?
I feel like if his game starts, or like if the way that he talks and the way that he carries himself changes, and I feel like already, like, you know, his production wasn't that good last week, and if he doesn't have the energy or the drive to do well this week because, you know, he doesn't want to play or for whatever reason or do this or do that, I think that's when you're going to have to start evaluating him and being like, why aren't you playing today? Because that's what a lot of people are having problems with Claypool, is when he went to Chicago, he was giving like 30% effort. Like he could have been doing so much more, but he was just kind of like lightly jogging the routes. He didn't really care. And it was like, and he kind of cared when he was with Pittsburgh, but at points it was almost like he didn't care either. And he would make stupid mistakes. Like, and it was just one of those things where it's like with Pickens, like, I don't think he's like that when it comes to making those stupid mistakes and stuff like that. But I feel like if his production will go down, like if his production starts going down, we notice like a change in how he's playing, or if he becomes very cocky and like continues doing the non-sportsmanship stuff, like, you know, doing some weird BS stuff on the field that might be controversial, that ends up in the news, like, you know, flipping off a player or doing something weird like that, causing a fight, you know, just stuff that's going to make him look really bad and really toxic. I think that's when you're really going to have to be like, all right, I'm sorry, dude, you got to leave. But if he ends up keeping his cool and stuff like that, and he's just frustrated, maybe it's not his teammates, maybe it's how he's the offensive coordinator, maybe it's the head coach, maybe I don't know. I don't know what's going through his head, because I'm not George Pickens' buddy. We don't have each other's phone numbers, unfortunately. but yeah, we'll see. I want to see how it goes out, because I when Antonio Brown had all that stuff happen, it just kind of all happened so suddenly that it was hard to register. I feel like with this, it's almost like it's boiling, and we'll see if they decide to turn off the oven and he stops boiling, or if they let it overflow. And then if it overflows, then we'll be able to address it from there. But for now, he brought back the Steelers pictures. We're going into Sunday with the block numbers. We're playing Green Bay. Maybe he'll get 100. Maybe he'll get 300 yards and 6 touchdowns. I don't freaking know. Maybe he'll blow up. Maybe he'll be the best wide receiver game ever or something. I don't know. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Good thoughts. Good thoughts. Thanks for watching that video, guys. If you want to check out a most recent full episode of No Buts About It, that's going to be right over here. Yeah, right there. Check that out. And if you just want to see more short clips, we're going to have one right over here for you to watch. Check out No Buts About It on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts, so you can listen to us on the go. Once again, have a great day and go do something nice for someone.